Great.
I'm going to record all this little conversation we're having.
That's okay. Great.
So you'll have that and the links to the Google Docs that has the sample questions and case studies. And there's several other documents which I name in the presentation.
Okay.
So you'll get all of that along with this too. So, you know, I like to be generous with my people that sign up for this because it's not cheap and, you know, you need to get value for what you're paying for.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Claire, I was just telling Mary that I need to leave early, and she's going to send out the recording and the links to all the documents. So we should be good.
Okay. Can you hear us, Claire?
I can, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hooray!
Oh my God.
Fabulous.
I'll be honest, I did not even go in my office. I am doing this from my house because I did not trust that internet connection because it was just not working for several days. It was spotty. It came on and off. And, you know, that's really annoying when you do a lot of work on Zoom. Yeah. So I am going to share my screen and we can get started. I'm hoping that these are going to come up because I had them up already. Here we go. All right. I'm going to have to get out of it for a second. Get out of share. I'm going to have to get out of share for a second. Oh, there we go. I had to get the thing loaded. Okay. Can you all see the slides?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great, great. So I will go through these. There's only the three of us on the call. Usually I ask for everyone to wait till the end for questions, but you know, if you have questions, feel free to ask away and we'll get started. So I think you two both know each other, but I don't know you. So if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and, you know, answer these questions. What's your coaching focus? Where are you from? How long you've been coaching? Why you signed up for this? And what do you hope to get out of it?
Okay, I can start if you like. So I'm Claire North. I am near Manchester in England, and Archie and I work together for the same company. He'll tell you where he is in a moment. I do some of my coaching inside an organisation, so I do some work with people on career development, kind of, and sometimes performance improvement, usually around communication. And then outside, I tend to work with people around purpose and meaning and kind of big life questions. And I'm very interested in bringing the body into it, so somatic elements of coaching as well. I've been coaching for about 5 years. I signed up partly because Artie suggested it to me, but then also having had a look, I've come across appreciative inquiry a little bit before when I was learning to teach meditation, and it was a positive experience. So I thought it might so what I'm looking for is maybe just a new angle on something that I've briefly seen before, but never really used in this context.
Okay, well, in this presentation, we're going to go through the 5 stages of appreciative inquiry, going through the process of it. And we're also going to look at the appropriate questions for each phase. And obviously that doesn't sound like a lot, but it takes a long time to go through all those. And then I have the resources that I'm going to provide everybody when we're done here. I might not get them out till tomorrow because I have to go to Connecticut tonight and present one for organizations, which I'm still working on. So I won't be able to do it till like Saturday, but that's okay. Okay, Artie.
I'm Artie Leary. I've worked with Claire now for a few years. So I'm new to the outside coaching. My coaching focus has been on helping software developers improve their process and make them more effective and well balanced. I'm from the Massachusetts area, born and bred around the Boston area. So what I'm hoping for is I'm starting to move outside of just the software world and coach individuals and not really development teams anymore. So a lot of this is new to me, and when I read the description, it was very intriguing. So I'm hoping to round out myself and be better at the one-on-one coaching for personal gain.
Right. And this focus is on the one-on-one coaching. It's
Perfect.
not really on organizational coaching.
Perfect.
ICF in Connecticut wanted one for the organization. So that's what I'm doing now. But anyway, that's great. And how long have you been coaching, Artie?
Well, I've been doing the software coaching, which it's called Agile Coach, but I don't even really think it's coaching. I've been doing that for 5 or 6 years now, but the one-on-one coaching, brand new to this sort of coaching.
All right, great. That's awesome. And just to let you know, I learned this technique when I was getting my master's certificate. And I went to a university for my coaching certification, so it was very academically run. And I was just looking through the slides here, and they're really detailed. We're not going to get into that much. I also took a 40-hour appreciative inquiry consultant course, so I'm certified to teach this to organizations and to individuals, and it was an ICF sponsored thing. So all right, so I'll tell you a little bit about me. I've been in big companies for over 30 years. I worked for big defense organizations, and I was never part of HR. So I don't know if you two have come out of the HR world.
No.
That's good, because most of my colleagues come from HR, so they speak HR. I can speak to the business, the actual on the ground, the roll up your sleeves, grunt type work that I did in these companies for over 30 years. I founded my own business about 5 years ago. I've written a number of articles and publications and different local publications that have published my work and have asked to hear or have me submit an article. And I also wrote a book. It's on Amazon for 99 cents. I think that right now I put it on a free download. So if you're interested, it's mostly sort of my view of the corporate world from where I sat. I think sometimes that managers think that you're deaf and that you can't hear what's going on. So I kind of wrote down things that I observed happening. And then I became a certified appreciative inquiry practitioner in 2017. And my little tagline for my company is helping good leaders get even better through positive behavior change. So I do focus a lot on behavior. So after my 30 years, I learned, I just talked about this, I learned a lot about what happens to people when they get stuck in that corporate cog, okay? Because you're just a wheel in the cog, a cog in the wheel, I should say. People don't feel significant. And, if you start complaining about things, they turn the tables on you. So rather than, get all depressed and feel bad about what was going on there, I realized that I still qualified for a lot of benefits. So I took advantage of the benefits that they gave me, and one of them was getting a master's degree. So here are some of the other things, the gifts that corporate gave me. And if you work in corporate, you want to make sure that your clients are not abandoning the benefits that the company will offer you. So as an employee, I got a master's degree in organizational leadership. I got a certified Six Sigma specialist certification. I'm a certified contract management certified specialist. I'm a certified IPT leader, which is integrated product team. I'm a certified subcontract manager. And the other things, the appreciative inquiry coaching, I took the money that they gave me as part of a layoff and I applied it towards my education. So I was able to become a credentialed coach and take the 40 extra hours in this particular discipline thanks to the generosity of my voluntary layoff package. So I never tell people to quit. Always look around and see what is there that they can offer you. So these are the gifts that I'm going to provide you at the end: open discussion, reference material, case studies, the appreciative interview guide for individual coaching, and anything else that you may want that you ask me for, I'll be happy to provide you. So what we're going to talk about today is really what you see there in the middle, the highlights. Appreciative coaching, if you've ever gotten into researching it all, it's kind of like nuclear fission. People spend their entire career devoted to learning about appreciative inquiry, and there's been a lot of different developments and theories in appreciative inquiry over the years, and it's finally kind of been baselined. It was really started in the late 70s, early 80s, and it went through all these iterations until it was accepted sort of in the mid-2000s. And there's still a little bit of, controversy around it because it does focus on the positive. But it would take months to cover the whole program in depth. In fact, when I took that 40-hour course, the book they gave us was about 4 inches thick. It was a 3-ring binder that was 4 inches full of stuff. So, and that was every day for 5 straight days. So here are the highlights, definitions of appreciative inquiry and the relation to positive psychology, because appreciative inquiry came first. What are the characteristics of great AI questions? We're going to go through the 5D process, and some people call it the 4D process. And then we're going to get into the core principles of appreciative inquiry, but I'm not going to talk at length about those because that's another whole sort of down the rat hole you can go with that, and we'll never get it in 90 minutes. So here's the difference between appreciative inquiry and positive psychology. Positive psychology is a scientific study of what makes life most worth living. So I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's focused on the positive. You can actually get a master's degree. It's called a MAP, and Master of Arts in Positive Psychology. And it talks about positive image, reframing the mindset and strengths, gratitude, resilience, compassion, self-confidence, hope, and flourishing. And as I said earlier, it is the precursor of, appreciative inquiry is the precursor of positive psychology. Positive psychology is applied on a very broad basis. I mean, it's a methodology of psychological treatment. And it's not, although you could use it for coaching, it's not a coaching practice or a coaching technique. So again, it focuses on happiness, well-being, flourishing, and in the words of Martin Seligman, have you heard of Martin Seligman?
No.
He's got a book called Flourishing, and I highly recommend that you read that. It's really focusing on behavior, individual behavior, and he talks about overcoming situations that are just so intolerable that there is an easy solution. And he talks about an example when he was waiting online for stamps at the post office. And the line was really long, and there was only one person handling the sales at the counter. And he turned around, everybody was complaining and bitching about it, and he turned around and asked everybody, "What are you waiting for?" And they all said, "I just want to buy a book of stamps." So there were about maybe 20 people in line. So when he got up to the counter, he said, give me 21 books of stamps. And he gave them to everybody.
Wow.
That was, you know, that's kind of a, like he just stepped up. He stepped up. It cost him some money, but, you know, book of stamps is probably, I don't know what it is now, maybe $20. So it cost him maybe, let's say, $100 offhand. But it solved a huge problem, and all that complaining went away, and it left everybody with a really positive experience and a really good feeling. So as he said, it's to optimize human functioning and aims to discover and promote the factors that allow individuals and communities to thrive. So imagine how well he was thought of in that community where he bought all the stamps. So, as I said, appreciative inquiry is sort of the beginnings of positive psychology. But appreciative inquiry is focused on bringing positive change to people individually in a coaching setting. And it can be used for marriage, career, or personal growth. The big thing is to put out a vision and a mission. So if you're planning a trip, you have to have some place to go, and it's the same thing. It works a lot like solution-focused where you push the client to come up with, you know, what is it that they want? What's the big picture? What's their vision? In positive psychology, it focuses on people's strengths. It's based on the belief that people want to lead meaningful lives and to be the best they can be, and people want to experience more love, work, and play. And I do weave these things into my coaching. What the bottom line with everybody in a coaching situation is they want to be happy. So in appreciative inquiry, according to David Cooper-Ryder, who is the founder of it, it's a search for that which is appreciated. It involves a search and focus on the positive core within an organization or individual. So he believes, Cooper-Ryder believes, that there is a positive core, and through appreciative inquiry, we bring, as coaches, we bring that core to the forefront, and it's no longer buried. And you do focus on people's strengths, and organizational strength as well. So when you see somebody coming in with a negative attitude, you have to point that out. I recently had a client who's a yes, but. So every time we got onto a positive path, he found a reason why it wasn't going to work for him. So I told him that in the last 15 minutes, all I had heard was these various negative statements. And he got very upset with me. He said, oh, this is very demeaning and I don't want to hear this. And I said to him, okay, we're here. The purpose is to turn negative thinking into positive action. And that's really the basis of appreciative inquiry. It's kind of like taking the same situation and turning it upside down so that you have a, you have a real perspective change. So, and it does say that right in the chart there. It's a fundamental shift in the overall perspective taken throughout the entire change process. So they have to see the wholeness of the human system. And what this means, human system, is anything that humans create, like an organization, a family, a group, whatever, any kind of an organization or human system that is created. And also there's a lot of rooting in social psychology here as well. And to just ask questions, inquire into what's good about it, what's possible. So if somebody's complaining about their boss, you want to ask them, well, what's possible for you in this situation? And they come up with things like, well, I'm going to quit, or, I wish my boss would get fired. And so we have to say, so, you then, of course, you know how to do this. You probe into, well, what are the consequences of those things? But you want to focus on, well, what successes have you had under this awful boss? And how do you get out of the situation? You want to always keep them focused on success. And again, it's a focus on solutions, not problems, and fostering a greater sense of awareness. And I use this a lot with people that are sent to me who are bullies. They have no empathy and they have no perspective, no sense of awareness of their behavior. And my job is to make them aware of their impact on other people and everybody else in their circle, because in some cases they're in very, very powerful positions, and they don't realize the impact that they have. And if that behavior continues, their job could really be in jeopardy. And that's the kind of client I usually get, is somebody who's about to be fired. And I've had really good success using this with those clients. Okay, so here's the 5D process. The 4D process doesn't use the define process or the define stage. This is really important because you want to identify an affirmative topic. And then we go to the discovery phase, which is ask about the best of what is. The dream phase, which is imagine what could be. The design phase, which is plan what will be. Make that plan, and deliver is create what will be. So you create the steps to actually execute on your plan, and then you have to hold people accountable for that delivery. And if they say they don't want to do it, then you say to them, well, you know, maybe that wasn't really your topic in the first place. Maybe there's another thing that you wanted to get to. Sometimes the deliver is called destiny, so that's why the word destiny is there. And you can see these are really sort of rooted in social psychology terms. So these are the 5 core principles, and we could do a whole course on these, and it's very complicated. But anyway, these are more appropriate for use in large organizations, and I will provide a table that'll be in that Google Docs section that you can access. There's a table of all of these principles and how they should be used, but we're not focusing on these today because they're I would say they're kind of corny, actually. They're very on the philosophical level, and you have to remember that this process was introduced by intellectuals. You know, David Cooperrider was a researcher. All of his cohorts were researchers. They lived in Ivory Tower at Case Western. They didn't start to publish or really get down to brass tacks until like the 90s. So it kind of floated around as a philosophy. And it's sort of experimental. But the main tenet is always focus on the positive core. Everybody has one. And I try to work with people. I had a client yesterday that was really under pressure because she just overspends. I mean, that's the problem. And she is not used to not having money. Her circumstances changed. And she's so down on herself, and she talks very negatively. And I keep telling her, let's find out what the positive core is. And then she'll recite a litany of all these great things that happened to her. And I said to her, that's the person who you are. That person that you're speaking negatively about no longer exists, because what you're talking about happened in the past. You have good things happening today and things that are going to happen in the future that are good for you. And so let's focus on that. So it's very difficult because she's rooted in a belief, really in a very strong belief system. These are tapes she's playing over and over in her head, that she's ashamed of where she is today. She's feels very negatively about herself, that her whole family has money and she doesn't want to show anybody, and very, very negative kind of spin. And so it's hard to pull her out. But I had to remind her, look, you've got these good things going. Let's focus on that. If you've come across any of these things, just feel free to chime in. So as I said, it's a search for what is appreciated in the human experience. And the researchers have defined this as a collaborative and highly participated system-wide approach to seeking, identifying, and enhancing the life-giving forces that are present when a human system is performing optimally. And I like to compare this with athletes. I don't know if you have ever been an athlete or you have kids that are athletes. My son was a football player, American Gridiron, and he was a really good receiver. And this was in high school, and he never missed a pass. And so one time my husband asked him, Danny, how do you do that? And he said, I think about it all the time. I visualize it. I dream about it. I dream that I'm running and I put up my hands and I catch the ball. So that's a human system, you know, and that's that feeling of imagining that life-giving force for a 16-year-old kid. It's catching a football on a football team, you know, and that's a real experience for him. It's great when he actually does it, but he imagines that feeling, the catching of the ball and what it does for him with his, you know, reducing cortisol and increasing dopamine and all those good things. And AI is a journey. It's kind of never really over. It's a journey. And these are David Cooperrider's words. It's a journey when a human system is at its moment of wonder and is uncovered and used to co-construct the best and highest future of that system. So he's using system in kind of a broad term, but anything that people do is really a system, because as you walk through life, you're connecting and everything. I don't know if you know, you must know, Artie, about the engineering piece where the system engineering touches everything. And that's how I think of a system. You can't just pull out the components and have something work, because, you know, we don't operate in a vacuum. Again, here's another definition. The cooperative search for the best in people, their organization, and the world around them. It's assumed that every human has untapped, rich, and inspiring accounts of the positive, and when linked to any change, mobilizes the changes that were never thought of. So that's very true when you think of some of the studies that have done, or even examples, when you begin to think of what was working really, really well in your life and what were you doing. The idea is, how do you replicate that feeling or those actions? So you kind of relive. That's where the past is actually good, if it's a success. And you ask them to go back to feeling that success. And what happens is the issue they're dealing with at the moment begins to take on a new angle for them. They see it completely differently when they take that positive experience and put it on top of the negative occurrence. And that's what makes all these really incredible things happen in people's lives. And I mean, it's very true. If you don't build on what was positive, I don't care what your experience was, you're never going to be able to change what's happening to you now. And I've seen this over, and I'll go back to my son, I'll go over and over again. He went to Hollywood about 10 years ago. He wanted to be a director, an actor, something, he didn't know what. So he started making music videos, and a friend of his who he roomed with in college was on a TV show, The Office, in the United States, and I'm not the one in Great Britain, in the UK, but the one in the United States. His friend was a star, and his friend married a star. So my son showed these two people the videos, and they loved them. And so, long story short, he now has a contract with Adult Swim, the Cartoon Network, to create a show. So he's had a show for about a year, and he's making more money than I ever did, or my husband and I ever did together. But he stayed in LA and starved. And I kept telling him, you have to do the same things you did as a successful athlete. And he could never get that in his head. And I said, one of the things is you got to think like a team member. Start to build your team. And he did, but from a very small sort of quiet start, because he had no confidence in himself in Hollywood. So now he's all over the place. He's got, great confidence, and he flies first class and all that. So that's a really good example of how when you take a successful experience and you apply it to your current life, you can see tremendous possibilities. Okay. So it is a dramatic departure from traditional problem-solving methods. It does develop empathy and perspective. Looks like I have a typo there in perspective. It's always constructive or positive change, and it drastically improves communication and collaboration. And I like this. I saw this picture and I loved it so much I put it in the slide. This is your brain on empathy. It lights up. Okay, so the art of the question. This is probably the part you've all been waiting for. So the problem-focused approach is, what is the biggest problem here? And the appreciative approach is, what are you doing when things are working well? So that can work on a factory floor. Oh, that's my husband's cell phone. Sorry about that. One problem with working from home. So you can see the difference here in these questions. He's coming down. Hang on a second. I'm going to put you guys on mute.
Can you hear me right now, Claire?
Yeah.
So what is this whole thing? You take the positive and you build on that, and you kind of ignore the negative. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's bringing the focus to the positive. So I'm brewing up a question about.
Okay, I'm back. You have a question?
I don't have the actual question yet, and it may be more relevant for your organizational level of this.
Okay.
But when you were talking about one of your clients who, despite the good things that were happening, could only see, framed it very negatively. It made me think of a particular team that I'm a part of, actually, that I've come to feel is only seeing, is unable to even notice the good things that, they don't even register.
Right.
And I don't know what my question is, but I'm thinking about how could I intervene? How could I have an impact on that situation from within? Because I'm not a coach in this set of circumstances. I'm part of the team.
You're a team member?
Yes.
So that probably would work better than you being a coach, because if you came in as a coach, you'd have to be wanted as a coach. They'd have to want you, so you'd never be in place. So maybe some of these questions, I have more questions coming. So the problem-focused approach, what obstacle is causing the most trouble? And the other way to ask the question is, what's the smallest change that could make the biggest impact? And that's the thing that people get stuck on. So they think immediately that they have to fix everything, when you really need to just start small. So if they're complaining about a huge problem, like, oh my God, the internet keeps going down, I can never get going on it. Every time I start something, it crashes or whatever. So there's a solution for it. There's probably a big solution, like, oh my God, this entire building is wired so poorly. So what's one small thing that the team could do to make the biggest impact? So you find out, does somebody know somebody? Is someone's boss influential? But what's the smallest thing that you could do? Because you want to focus on success. So the smallest, littlest change, maybe they just need to be in a different room with windows instead of a closed room with no windows. maybe some small change would make a big impact on the the conduct of that team and get them out of that negative trough, if you will. And here's another one, and I'm sure you've heard all these. Which issue surfaces the most often, and why does it keep happening? And the appreciative way to do it is, what possibilities exist that we have not yet considered? So, you're not ignoring the question, you're just, or the problem rather, you're just focusing on it differently. You're focusing on it in a positive way that makes people think. And then the last one is really becoming huge in organizations. And even in individual coaching, I use this a lot. I use this technique a lot. Tell me a story of when you were at your very best and when you performed really well. So they start getting really lit up when they're telling these positive stories. And then your job as the coach is to then, like I did with my son, is like, well, how are you going to approach this problem you're having now the way you succeeded at that time in the past?
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So is there a risk of you missing one of the problems if you're having them focus on all the things that are going right and going well? Is there a risk ever that you're missing one of the negative things that needs to be addressed?
Yeah, that is a common criticism of this. And oftentimes you have to find out what the issues are. And there's a way to do that. If you're in a big organization, for instance, the example I'm going to show you is when GTE laid off 17,000 people. And the employees that were left behind were having really big morale problems. They were coming and saying, I hate this place. I don't know if I'm going to be next. And they were trashing the company outside of work. So GTE had to do something about it. They called in David Cooperrider, and he partnered with my instructor for this 40-hour course that I took. And they took they interviewed key members of the leadership team to identify the issues that they needed to talk about. And they broke it down really into the smallest imaginable, really minutia organizational piece. They broke it down into teams and groups and even individuals. So one way to start this, if you're in an organization, is that you ask the team, or you give them a little bit of training, maybe an overview like this. You ask them to ask everybody else what they think the issues are, and those issues come forward. So these things, the problems are going to arise by your inquiry with your client, the reason he's coming to the table. Yeah. He'll give you a list of things, and each coaching session, you're going to ask, what do you want to focus on today? Last week you mentioned you were concerned about getting a promotion. Is that what you'd like to talk about? And they'll say, no, I don't want to talk about that now because something else took place. I got a bad review, or I got a great review, or something like that. So they're going to tell you what the problem is. You really don't have to ask. And there's another question which you probably learned along the way is, what else?
Yeah.
What else is there? Or is there anything else that you'd like me to know? So through the questioning, you bring